Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Solidarity Live. It's, as always, Jocelyn here at Social Security Works and ACT TV. And I am so honored to be speaking today with Nancy Altman, the president of Social Security Works. Nancy, how are you this morning?
Well, I'm doing well, although as everyone knows, we're living in a really unbelievable time.
Yes. So I have so many questions for you. I don't even really know where to start, but okay, so for those who don't know, unfortunately, there is a long-standing Republican plan to plunder Social Security, and it's looking like Trump is actually going to maybe take us there. His plan to cut the payroll tax would result in defunding Social Security and many people losing benefits as early as next year. Nancy, am I explaining this poorly? What does this look like for people?
You were explaining it exactly correctly. Everyone should be on red alert. Everyone who cares about Social Security, who has family members who receive Social Security, who hope to get Social Security one day, who are contributing to Social Security, should be on red alert. As you correctly said, there's been a small ideological, fringe group that has opposed Social Security since the 1930s when it was first enacted. President Dwight Eisenhower, Republican president, wrote to his brother in the 1950s, a letter that's now online, that there are those who oppose Social Security. He called them a tiny splinter group. Their number is negligible and they are stupid. Unfortunately, a member of that tiny splinter group now sits in the Oval Office. And indeed, as you say, he is a clear and present danger to Social Security.
Well, and I think that it's disgusting to the privatization of any public good is a disgusting thing. But with Social Security, it's especially egregious because these are people's money. Like this comes from us. We pay for our own later life care, and they're just going to take it for what?
You are exactly right. It is, in fact, again, quoting Republican President Dwight Eisenhower, he called it part of our sturdy self-reliance, that we all are contributing towards our own security. But Jocelyn, you know how much money Wall Street gets from Social Security? It pays out $1 trillion a year in benefits. It's got extremely low administrative costs. Less than a penny of every dollar spent is spent on administration. 99 cents, more than 99 cents is paid back in benefits, and zero of that goes to Wall Street. So, as I say, there are those who want to get their hands on it, and Donald Trump, who lies about everything, said when he was running that he was not going to cut Social Security. If you look at his record before he started running, it was clear he opposed Social Security. If you looked at his record while in office, every single one of his budgets proposed cuts to Social Security. And he now seems to have discovered a way to defund it unilaterally without Congress and destroy it for all of us.
Well, so what is Congress doing, and what can we be doing to stop this madness?
Well, as you say, Social Security doesn't contribute a penny to the federal debt. It is completely self-supported by our contributions. It's held in trust. In legal terms, all of us who contribute are the beneficial owners. And Donald Trump has been obsessed. He called it a Ponzi scheme. He said he wanted to privatize it before running for office. Since in office, he has been obsessed with defunding it. Now, normally you'd think that takes Congress, and until recently, I think he thought it took Congress. And it should require Congress, and Congress has been resisting it. Even Republicans have called it raiding Social Security, and they don't want to do that right before an election.
No, of course not.
So he's discovered a way, which is there's a arcane provision in the Internal Revenue Code that says when there's a federally declared disaster or a terrorist attack, you can defer taxes. So that's how we had our taxes deferred from April 15th to July 15th. Well, he said, oh, this is a good idea. What if I just keep deferring Social Security? as I say, it's completely funded. It doesn't have any borrowing authority. So if you stop paying into it, it stops paying benefits. And that is really devious, underhanded, stealthy attack. He's done it now. He's sort of like testing the waters. On August 8th, he directed the Secretary of the Treasury to defer those contributions for 4 months till January 1. But he did say, if reelected, he would, this is his word, he would terminate those contributions. And when he says terminate contributions, that also terminates Social Security.
That's just so disgusting. And I mean, what's crazy about this is his base. Trump's base is primarily people who rely on Social Security. Why aren't people getting this, Nancy? You think they would be up at arms.
Yes, and I'm so appreciative of you having me on, because I think what we need to do is get the word out. I think the mainstream media is not taking it seriously enough, as they, I think, haven't taken seriously enough all of his threats. He just committed a felony by telling people to vote twice. And it's kind of, yeah, people are kind of making noise about it, but I haven't looked at Fox News. I don't know how much they're reporting about it. It is so Donald Trump won seniors votes in 2016, white seniors. People were voting against their interests, but he said he wasn't going to touch the Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. So I'm sure a lot of people just voted on other issues. Now, of course, he's got their attention because COVID-19 is a particular threat to seniors and people with disabilities. And he's, what's going on in nursing homes, his incompetent handling, he's really killed seniors. As he's killing seniors, he's taking the money out of our pockets at the same time. He's robbing us. And I'm just hoping that the mainstream media catches on and gets the word out.
I think the Republican betrayal of older Americans is just egregious. And it's like you said, Nancy, why is everybody not talking about this? It's fundamentally disgusting. This is their voting base. And these are the people who are dying at the highest rates of COVID-19. And they're being left to the sideline financially, public health wise. So when you talk to people about this, is it just like a cognitive dissonance, or do you think it's, again, just a lack of awareness?
Well, I do think the polling is showing that white seniors are moving away from Donald Trump. And I think it's for these reasons. There's really, there are plenty of explanations, but I think these are, when it gets your attention, when you're feeling that someone's, doesn't care if you live or die.
Yes.
And, that's more serious, but also serious is your economic security. You don't want to be on the street, which is what would happen. 2 out of 3 seniors rely on Social Security for most of their income. So this is an issue that, there are these kind of stereotypes of greedy geezers, living in these gated communities and playing golf the way Donald Trump does. But most seniors are just above the poverty line. And Social Security is what the difference is. So it should get their attention. I think it's starting to get their attention, but there is this sense that, he's just talking, we need Congress. Congress will stop him. But don't forget, if he gets reelected, he will not be accountable to anyone. He will have the veto pen. So even if a majority of Congress wants to stop him, they won't be able to. If he keeps deferring, he'll have all the leverage because they will need a veto-proof majority to stop him.
And we don't have that.
I don't think we're going to, I'm hopeful that we will have, I'm hopeful we'll have the White House and the Senate and the House after the election. But if we lose the presidency, even if we have the Senate, we're not going to have a veto-proof majority.
Right. And, it's very, I think a lot of this can feel so heady and so policy heavy for people. They don't really get how, like you're saying, Nancy, this is really urgent.
Well, and let me say a couple things. One is, of course, all the Republicans in elected office are complicit. None of them are speaking out against this. But in case people think, oh, this is just partisan talk, and that's, I think, part of the noise too. The Social Security Administration, what Social Security is wage insurance. It's insurance against the loss of wages in old age. If you become, it's disability insurance and life insurance. And like any insurer, there are about 40 actuaries employed by the Social Security Administration who are projecting, making projections about this to make sure benefits can always be paid. The chief actuary was asked what would be the effect of doing what Donald Trump said. If starting January 1, 2021, the payments, we just stop paying the contributions. And what he said was, what his letter says, and it's online, anybody watching can go to ssa.gov, /OACT and find the letter. What the letter says is that by the middle of 2021, the 10 million people who are getting disability benefits will get zero. And by 2 years later, the 55 million people getting old age benefits and survivors benefits will get zero. If that doesn't get people's attention, I don't know what will.
Especially in the middle of a pandemic and an economic depression. Like, what are people supposed to do if they lose their benefits? I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't want anyone I love who's retired and in this situation to go back to work right now. What are people expected to do?
Well, and that's if they can go back to work. I mean, we're talking about people who are in their 80s, their 90s.
Yes.
Maybe they can go to Walmart, but, not be a greeter, but not likely. Before Social Security was enacted, people generally worked as long as they could. And when they couldn't, most people cannot work forever. And certainly people in physically demanding jobs can't work forever. They literally moved in with their adult children.
Yeah.
Those that didn't have children who could or would take them in literally went to the poorhouse. Every state but New Mexico had poorhouse or poor farm that was disproportionately older people who'd been independent their entire lives, but as they grew old, they had nothing to do with, and people in the poorhouses were called inmates. This is not that long ago. We're talking about the 1930s, about less than 100 years ago. And the problem is, are we going to return to that? If we don't have Social Security, people either are going to be on the street or they're going to be begging for their families to take them in. Now, the difference between the Great Recession about a decade ago and the Great Depression was hidden in the shadows of the unemployment figures during the Great Depression were children and were the older parents, because that's who was being supported by those wages that were lost. In the Great Recession, not only did Social Security continue to pay benefits in full and on time, when people joke, the 401ks, those who were fortunate to have 401ks saw them disappear or had to withdraw funds from them. Social Security kept paying, and seniors were able to help their adult children. So that's the world we have now. That's the world, it seems to me, we want to build on it. Joe Biden is for expanding Social Security. The Democrats are for expanding Social Security. There really couldn't be a clearer choice. The Democrats are for protecting and expanding Social Security. The Republicans are for defunding and ending Social Security as we know it.
Well, and again, it's so blatant. This is not a small government act, which is what I think people miss. There's this idea, the conservatives just want less government interference. No, they don't. They want to take your hard-earned money and give it to their rich friends.
Exactly. And everyone says about Donald Trump, and I don't know, I guess it's a strength and a weakness, that he says the quiet part out loud. So the Republican Party, today's Republican Party, unlike Dwight Eisenhower's Republican Party, are part of that tiny splinter group that wants to end Social Security. But they're smart enough to say, we want to save Social Security. We want a bipartisan solution, all these things. What Donald Trump says is, hey, I could kill I could shoot someone in broad daylight and still win re-election. So I think he's testing out, gee, I guess, let me see if I can kill Social Security in broad daylight, announce that I'm going to do it, and see if I win re-election. And it's up to us
to make sure that doesn't happen. Do you
Yes.
think, I mean, so, okay, with this, so it sounds like on our to-do list to save Social Security is get Trump out for sure. So win the election, win the Senate. What should, if I want to call my congressman with an angry thought, what can I really say? Why did you let it get this far?
I think if you want to call with an angry thought, is to say, I want you to disavow what Donald Trump has done. I want you to, speak out and tell him that it is not up to him to defund this program. And then I would say, and I want you to tell me, are you for expanding or cutting Social Security? Mm-hmm. People should not be let off with these platitudes about, I want to fix Social Security or I want to save Social Security.
It's not broken.
It's not broken. The question is, do you want to expand it or do you want to cut it? It's a question of values. And fortunately, as polarized as the American people are, poll after poll after poll shows we are not polarized about Social Security. Tea Partiers agree with union members that we should not cut Social Security. We need to expand Social Security.
That's interesting.
That's where the Democrats are. The Republican members are really out of touch with their own constituents.
Well, and yeah, that's so interesting. I didn't know that. So Tea Partiers are pro Social Security.
Absolutely, because they tend to trend older. They tend to be dependent on it. And we all know people. In fact, my very favorite, I shouldn't say my very favorite, but one of my polls that I just love was one that was conducted in March of 2016. So in the middle of the last election, presidential election, and still on the ballot were Donald Trump and Kasich and Ted Cruz, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And the poll asked people who they supported and then asked them a series of policy questions where they stood. And so one of the questions they asked was about Social Security. The interesting thing was all of them, including Ted Cruz's own voters, agreed with Bernie Sanders about Social Security.
What?
None of them agreed with Ted Cruz, who they were voting for.
I need to find this. What is that?
It's a Pew poll, March 2016.
Oh my God.
But it just goes to show that the Republicans have really been good about not being clear of what their position is. And even Donald Trump understands the politics, which is why he said he wouldn't cut it. So today he talks about the payroll tax. It's very important to understand that this is not a tax the way the income tax and the excise tax. And of course, we all want to cut taxes, blah, blah, blah. Of course. This is Social Security's dedicated contribution. This is dedicated revenue that we all pay. FICA, which is the authorizing statute, and it's the FICA withholding, stands for the Federal Insurance Contributions Act. What's really important to understand was that was enacted in the 1930s. That was well before the Madison Avenue names for legislation. That was before the Patriot Act, No Child Left Behind, all these, sort of Madison Avenue names. When they raised taxes, they called them revenue acts. When they worked on letting union workers be able to collectively bargain, they called it the National Labor Relations Act. And when they wanted to fund Social Security, they called it the Federal Insurance Contributions Act. That was not spin. They were setting up an insurance program, and the insurance contributions, or today in today's parlance, would be premiums. That's what all of us are paying into Social Security.
Yes.
That's what Donald Trump is trying to get rid of.
I love that you say Madison Avenue names, because that is what they do. They take something terrible and give it a great name. Like, I want to be a patriot. Patriotism is good. It should be the "we're spying on you for no reasons" act, because that is way more honest.
Exactly. Exactly.
And but you're right. It's just so not intuitive. Like, I had to read, oh, okay, so what does cutting the payroll tax mean? Why would your average person know how that works? And it's just, it's crazy. I mean, especially because we've already seen things like you're talking about homelessness and we're already dealing with that with COVID. How can Republicans justify exacerbating what is already a national emergency? Do you think they just don't care?
Well, I think it's a couple of things, and I think it really goes back to the point we were talking about before, and that is one reason I think some people don't realize Social Security is under attack is because of the language, that it's become common to call these, even though they're insurance contributions or premiums, to call them taxes. And so, and they don't even say Social Security taxes, they call them payroll taxes. So it sounds like, oh, well, that's a good thing. And I think a lot of people don't make that connection. And I think that's intentional.
Yes.
There's been a real effort to, it's the death tax rather than the estate tax. It's the, entitlements rather than mandatory spending or Social Security contributions. So I think that's a piece of it. And I do think that the people who are currently in charge of the federal government, the Republicans, are a really radical group. I mean, they obviously don't believe in democracy. They're happy to gerrymander
Yes.
and all of that. They clearly, they talk about small government, but they clearly don't believe in small government. They will shovel tons of money to defense. That's just what they want the government to spend on. They're clearly not concerned about regulating because they're more than happy to regulate women's bodies. What they don't like are these programs that don't benefit Wall Street, and Social Security is one of them. So I think they've had their knives out for this program since it began, and they now are in power, and their constituents don't agree with them. So they're trying to figure out how to do it without getting thrown out of office.
I think you break that down so beautifully, Nancy, because it is overwhelming to be like, how is this even happening? But it's what you just said. We have a radical niche of the Republican Party that fundamentally doesn't believe in democracy, and they're the ones with the reins.
That's exactly right. And they're not representing their constituents.
No.
Because the polling shows that their constituents don't, certainly on this issue, their constituents don't agree with them.
And it's just like, yeah. And it's difficult because I always feel uncomfortable. Like you don't want to tell people with kids and jobs to be like, you need to sit down every day and read 4 issues of the newspaper. But people do need to stay informed because this is really bad what's going on with Social Security, with the climate, with healthcare. We've relied on this assumption that the government is governing for our public good, and that's fundamentally not happening right now.
I think that's exactly right. And there are so many. You would think that most people would just, on moral grounds, would just see, the name calling and the bullying and all of that would be enough. But if it's not, look at the bread and butter issues. I mean, obviously, this Republican Party in the Senate that has not held Donald Trump accountable, and Donald Trump we've got, 4 or 5% of the world's population and about a quarter of the deaths from COVID-19. We are all, we're having this by Zoom, not in person.
I know, right?
Because of the pandemic. He has wrecked the economy. And now, if he's reelected, he will be completely unbound. The Republican Party has shown itself just to be totally complicit with what he does. They'll let him do whatever he wants. And he has made it clear that what he wants to do is undermine our economic security. He wants to take away Social Security.
And, meanwhile, the same class of people, their profits are just going up.
Yes. Yes. I mean, and in fact, an important point I like to make about Social Security, the Republicans like to talk about saving it or fixing it. Social Security is a solution, and expanding Social Security is a solution. We have a retirement income crisis where too many people who are working today we no longer have private sector defined benefit pension plans that are disappearing traditional plans, 401ks to those who are fortunate enough to have them are inadequate for virtually any but the very, very wealthy, the Mitt Romneys of the world. So people in the future are going to rely on Social Security more. So the obvious thing to do is to expand Social Security. That retirement income crisis is getting worse thanks to the pandemic, because so many people are out of work, so many people are drawing down. Those who are fortunate to have 401ks are drawing them down. We also have really immoral income and wealth inequality. But again, if you don't care about the morality, it's very destabilizing of our society. And it's getting worse because of this pandemic. I mean, you can see what's happening to Wall Street profits and to billionaires. I mean, the idea of billionaires just doubling and tripling their wealth while everyone else is facing evictions and are food insecure. Expanding Social Security is a solution to that too. So it is the last time we had this kind of income and wealth inequality was in the 1920s, and Congress established the minimum wage, gave workers the right and the power to collectively bargain, and started Social Security. What we should do now is sweep the current Republicans out of office, get a new slate of people in, and then fight to raise the minimum wage, strengthen workers' rights to collectively bargain, and expand Social Security.
Well, and Nancy, I mean, like, I love every single thing you're saying, first of all. But I love the point you make about this isn't okay. So rich people never give us things because they're nice. They do it because, as you said, to not do so is incredibly destabilizing. Like, if I'm a rich person, I don't want to live in a country where poor people are running around with, trying guillotines and pestilence. Like, it's just a bad situation. Like, they should just give us our retirement accounts and let us be happy.
Well, and the point is, and it's a cliche to talk about the rising tide lifts all boats and all of that, but it is true that we all are better off if each of us is better off if we're all better off.
Yes,
that none
absolutely.
of us is better off if there are people who are homeless, even if we're not homeless. Mm-hmm. People are not better off if there are children who are not well educated, if you can't get a good education, or if people graduate from school with mountains of debt. And we're certainly not better off if old people can't afford to support themselves and are either on the streets or begging, knocking on the door of their adult children. Sometimes, people want to live with extended families. That's great, but it should be a choice, not a mandate. So I think people are short-sighted. The billionaires are short-sighted. I mean, climate change is another one.
Yeah.
How can people working in the fossil fuel, don't you care about your grandchildren? I mean, yes. Even if you don't care about yourself, but it is this point about that somehow, and Donald Trump really epitomizes it, that he thinks if you're not making money, somehow you're a loser, as opposed to you're public spirited.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that is something, we have to fight this politically and culturally, this idea that exorbitant wealth is a sign of success, instead of frequently it's kind of a sign of sociopathy. Like, let's be honest.
or the good fortune,
yes, yes,
who you're born to.
True.
Donald Trump was not only fortunate, he inherited a lot of money, and he bankrupted, he's lost a lot of it, and now he's using the office to in such ways
to enrich himself very publicly.
And his children.
When it comes to the Biden campaign, what are they doing well, and where do you think we should be pushing them?
Well, the good news is that they are very good on policy. Joe Biden has come out in favor of expanding Social Security and lowering the Medicare age to 60, which I think are both extremely important policies. And they understand that seniors may be a group they can win, and they've been putting out a number of good tweets and editorials, op-eds, and ads. So that's all they're doing. That they're doing well. What I would push them on, and I think I would wait until they're in office, and then I push them as hard as I could, and that is that, again, Social Security is a solution. The people, Franklin Roosevelt and the others who created it, understood it as basic economic security. They had a much more expansive vision of what Social Security is. So they actually thought there should be universal guaranteed health care. And they advocated long-term and short-term disability, in which would, and we got the long-term disability, but we still haven't gotten short-term disability. Within short-term disability, which should be sick pay, it should be family leave, it should be any time that we have to leave the workforce, and we need a replacement of those wages. So I think, and they settled for Medicare as a first step to Medicare for all. So I think that Joe Biden is kind of in the middle of the Democratic Party right now with expanding Social Security, but I think it should be expanded much, much more. And I think we should interpret it the way the founders did, which means basic education, universal childcare, child paid family leave, paid sick leave. That all fits within the umbrella of Social Security.
You're making me happy. Can you imagine a country where that would be so nice, where people could just work and not have to worry about getting bankrupt over a cancer diagnosis and just live their lives.
That's right, with a basic sense of security. I think, and you know, there's, again, this is sort of right-wing talking points that somehow, you know, makers and takers, and there are people who will be lazy and all that. It's quite the opposite. I think if people know that they have a foundation under which they can't fall, that frees people up to take risks, to be entrepreneurs, to try to open a new business, to explore your interests, to go back to school. There are so many things that could be done. I think it will free us, and it will make us, and I think that the values of freedom, I think, let me make sort of a more general point, and that is that I think the reason that Social Security is so popular across the political spectrum is that it embodies basic American values.
Yes.
It embodies the value of, you know, the harder you work, the more you get. That your benefits are dependent on how much you contribute. It also, though, understands that we're all in it together, and that the lower income you are, the less discretionary income you are. So you should get a benefit that's a higher percentage of your pay, which is what Social Security does. It values us as a community. It's a family program. It really supports the family, and as Dwight Eisenhower, as I like to say, he talked about it as sturdy self-reliance. So it's the idea that each of us has individual responsibility, but we have universal risks.
Yes.
Any of us, rich or poor, could, you know, step in front of a bus and become so disabled that we can never work again, or die, leaving young children. We all hope to live, you know, a long, healthy life. Social Security is a benefit you can't outlive. No matter if you live to 120, you'll still get that monthly benefit. So I think people recognize the value of Social Security. And what I would urge Joe Biden and the Democrats to do is talk about the values, not the details and get too much into the weeds, but the values of which unify us.
Well, and like the idea that we should not, it's almost like we've become Stockholm syndromed into the level of current, like, panic and anxiety we currently feel. It doesn't have to be this hard. We are the richest country in the world, and we fund this ourselves. It's our money. There is no reason that we should give it up to Wall Street.
No, and I love the way you phrase that, because it is a kind of Stockholm syndrome. It's we need to free ourselves from these bonds to really see clearly what is going on.
Yeah.
And it's hard because the people who do not share our values, Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, and the other Republicans who are complicit in what he's doing, you know, Mike Pompeo, you go through the whole list. they want to hide the ball. They do not want us to see what is going on. And that's why we can't just listen to their words. You can't just listen to those speeches at their convention. You have to look at what he's really doing. And what he's done is undermined. He's, gone after the post office. He's now saying that people who serve in the military are losers. He it's gone against a free election. He's telling people to go out and vote twice. I mean, let's look at his actions.
The all of everything you just said, I feel like we could do an entire 3-hour what is going on with this about, because he's encouraging people to commit felonies. What is that? Why are people like, oh, that's normal? It's not.
Well, and speaking of felonies, I mean, here you've got one of his supporters who goes to Kenosha and murders 2 people, brings an AR 15 and murders 2 people and seriously wounds another. And Donald Trump could say all kinds of things. He could say, I don't want to, it's a case in process, it's this, he could, I mean, what he should say is what Joe Biden said, which is violence on either side. But even if he didn't want to go that far, he could say, he could, kind of slip away. But what does he go? He goes out and basically encourages other people to take law into their own hands, take their guns and shoot whoever happens to walk into their path.
Yeah.
That is why, as you say, it's Stockholm syndrome. It's why people feel so threatened under this guy, because he's unleashing forces that are extremely dangerous.
And it's been well documented by so many people that this sort of racialized, or even if it's even the things that aren't racialized, this violent instigation is terrifying. You have a small but armed portion of the Republican constituency that wants to start a civil war.
Yes.
And the president is like, yeah, that seems right. Both sides have fine people on them. We can't, this isn't normal. None of this is normal.
No, and it really is. And that's why, I mean, there are so many, this election, it's a cliche to say, oh, the most important election coming, but this one really is, because we have someone who really, I don't want to start with my conspiracy theories about Donald Trump and Russia, but even, if you don't believe the tape exists or whatever it is, whatever they have over him, even if you don't want to go that far, it's clear that he is undermining a free press, that he is undermining free and fair elections, that he is driving wedges everywhere he can, that he is basically appears to be wanting to start a race war. He's, it's just unfathomable to me that you could have someone who's in power and still has 40% of the support of 40% of the electorate, who is such a danger to all of us. I mean, we have our political views, we have our policy differences, but we all reside in the same country. And that if this becomes unstable and turns into Syria and there are bombs going off, right and left, that can affect anybody. We want a stable country, and this guy is not. He's bringing us exactly the opposite. And if he stays in power 4 more years, it's hard to imagine just what will happen. It's very, very dangerous.
Well, I really appreciate you bringing that urgency home for people. Like, we have 2 months till the election, which is crazy.
Yes.
This year feels simultaneously like a decade, and also like, where did the time go at the same time? But I know that we've kept you long over what we asked you for, but Nancy, you're wonderful. What do people absolutely need to be doing right now to protect everything that Social Security stands for?
I think the first thing is to get the word out. And again, if you don't believe me, or you want, you're worried about fake news, go to the Social Security Administration website. You can read it for yourself, the chief actuary's letter. But what I think people need to do is let everyone they know, their family, their friends, especially if they know people in swing states. It's a whole other topic, the system that we have, but those votes are actually more important. So if they know people in swing states, to get the word out that if they want to see their Social Security benefits expanded, they should vote for the Democrats. If they want to see the program ended and the contributions they've made just gone, they should vote for the Republicans. That's what's at stake in this election. It's an all hands on deck. I think everybody needs to do it. And, and this has been said, vote early, and just make sure your voice is heard.
Now I feel inspired. I feel like I should go do some virtual phone banking or something. Nancy, thank you so much. Oh, I can't believe I forgot to mention she has an amazing book coming out in April. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Nancy Altman, Why Social Security Works for Everyone. And can people pre-order that book?
I think it is, I know people like independent bookstores. It's the New Press. And it's Social Security Works for Everyone. I believe there is I don't know if you can pre-order it yet, but there is something on Amazon about it, but Great. It will be coming out.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for being with us today. And you guys, seriously, this is a huge deal. Please pay attention and get these people out of office. I mean, they're not qualified to work at an Applebee's, much less run the government. So thank you for being with us today on Solidarity Live. Everybody have a wonderful weekend.
And thank you so much for having me.